What's happening, people? Welcome to Inside Devils, the show that keeps you bang up to date with everything coming out of Old Trafford. We're here on location at the Calamus Marina here in Istanbul. It's a lovely morning. It hasn't been all rosy for Manchester United, though, as we've drawn 1-1 here against Fenerbahçe. And joining us to take us through it is, of course, Crookie, Angelina Kelly. I'm going to welcome him for his debut. Yes, his debut. Tier 1, Mr. Laurie Whitwell. He hates when I say that. Laurie Whitwell from The Athletic. Let's get straight into this, man, because at the end of the day, it's another game in which Manchester United have not won. And Jose Mourinho said it's not a point for us, but a point for them. Is he right?
I think he's got 1 point, but I think his agenda there probably is to raise up his own team, to paint United as these really difficult big opponents, and therefore their performance will, I think, stand the test in the eyes of the fans, because he's been under scrutiny, hasn't he, for Fenerbahçe fans. They're not been in great form in the league so far, so I think he came in with a certain mindset to make sure that he was going to come away from this game with his reputation enhanced and solidified. In the press conference afterwards, he was taking issue with some of the Turkish press that were suggesting that it wasn't the best performance. But I do think that United will look at this performance result with in isolation. It's fine. 1 point away in Fenerbahçe, a difficult place to come against a Jose Mourinho team where the dramatics were all there, weren't they? He's getting sent off in the second half, but the fact that it's the third Europa League draw in a row is the issue, and it comes in a context of a difficult season, across the board. In
terms of the game, Angelina, we saw before the game murmurings coming out about Nazir Mazraoui starting in the number 10.
Let's be honest.
We all lost our minds and said, no, it's got to be a typo. Yeah, that's UEFA's got that wrong. People on social media, the Indian No account saying it's definitely happening. It did happen. He has a part in the first goal, but after that, not much in terms of creating. And Erik Ten Hag's reason for starting him there, sort of saying he can manage the atmosphere, etc., etc. Was that a disaster to play him there?
I don't think it was as big of a disaster as I was expecting, but I just was confused by the whole thing, because he's a player that has played in that position, I think, a couple of times, maybe when he was at Ajax with Erik Ten Hag. But this also makes me question, how much faith does he have in Joshua Zirkzee? I mean, he did not have a good game. He had that good pass, with the goal, but he wasn't great. He looks like he's lacking in some serious confidence when he's playing that ball through. I mean, I know, Crookie, you definitely saw it, when Garnacho was screaming for the ball and he just didn't pass it to him, and he was so frustrated. But we're told that Zirkzee can play in that number 10 role. I was thinking without Bruno Fernandes, maybe we would see that. Maybe we'd see him a little bit more comfortable. Maybe this could be a position he could play in, so that confused me. If you're not using Zirkzee, who's your new signing who can play in that position, you'd think Christian Eriksen, who can play in that position. So the whole thing was quite strange for me, I'll be honest. And I also found, I mean, I'm sure we'll get onto it as well, but the substitutions, the Antony situation, I have a feeling that Crookie's going to want a little rant on Antony. That whole situation, the fact that we have not seen Amad Diallo properly since the Porto game, the team selection and the substitutions at the moment are baffling me a bit. Yeah,
it is one to think about. Crookie, you look at Amad as well, not starting in the 10. He looked furious when he came on. You saw René Haka and Ruud van Nistelrooy sort of trying to G him up to say, listen, we know we put Antony on instead of you a few minutes ago, but we do believe in you now.
I get it though. Why yeah. would you want to get excited when someone like Antony? The only thing I'm thinking is it a situation where Ten Hag has realised he's got to sell him maybe, and he's thinking, right, get him a bit of game time, see how he looks, see if we can ship him off, in January. That's the only logical reason as to why you started Antony instead of Diallo. But he also said, didn't he, post-match, about how Antony's been training really well, and then said Amad's had some good moments. That, for me, filled me with dread. I'm thinking, if we got Sancho 2.0 is this him trying to throw a bit of shade? Maybe I'm just reading into it a little bit too much. But I struggle to see why Antony's starting over.
I don't think it'll be an attitude thing. One thing you definitely can't label at Amad, he's such a humble, quiet kid. If anything, we want him to be a little bit more boastful, a little bit more confident in himself. But if you're him, you must be absolutely fuming. And Antony comes on, gets injured. We saw him walking out on crutches and a protective boot as well.
I think it's quite weak management from Ten Hag, picking on the guy that isn't going to kick off in the dressing room. But I think it was quite sad to see Amad in that state. I mean, as you say, there's videos going around of him being given instructions. He's not listening.
Yeah.
He's so angry, that he's not started the game, and Mazraoui's played in the number 10, where Ahmed actually has played to good effect previously at his other clubs. Then when they do make a change, on comes Anthony instead. So his head's all over the place at the moment, but really that sort of epitomises the muddled thinking of Erik Ten Hag. This is a manager who seems to have no awareness of the fact that his head should be on the chopping block, because when you come to a place like Fenerbahçe needing a result, you pick your best team. You don't start experimenting with a guy who I think's played 9 minutes as a number 10 previously in his career. You can call it a bold move. I call it foolhardy. If you don't get a result, and a draw probably isn't enough, then it's going to be used as a stick to beat you with. I think Højlund should have started. He's still playing his way back to fitness and confidence, and looked a lot more effective at the top end of the pitch than Zirkzee did when he came off the bench. So it sums up the muddled thinking of Erik Ten Hag. And Laurie's right. A point away from home in a hostile atmosphere on its own is not a bad result, but it continues that dreadful European run. No win in more than a year now. It was a year today, yesterday, that United snuck past Copenhagen, and I asked Erik Ten Hag about that European record in the press conference on Wednesday, and again he brushed it aside. It's not a problem. First season we won some games in Europe. Last season was difficult.
He's won trophies.
We'll be back. Oh, he compared himself to Jose Mourinho.
Yeah. That was too much. Do we all agree that was too much?
Absolutely. As soon as we walked out of the presser, we were walking, weren't we, to go get a cab, and I went, Crookie, did you realise that, like, Eric just, like, without anybody realising, just basically compared himself to Jose Mourinho and was like, we got loads in common. And look, listen, you got to back yourself, Laurie. You do have to back yourself. But some people have suggested, you know, is it borderline arrogance / delusion, or is it just overconfidence, or is he just playing the game?
Aren't all managers a little bit delusional, a little bit crazy? The best managers, and I'm not, necessarily putting Erik Ten Hag in that bracket of Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, but I think he actually sort of said recent years, right? And then he probably realised Jose hasn't actually won trophies recently. So I don't know if that was part of it, but they seem to be both, a bit of a loving right between them. I think Jose's thinking, well, that's part of his modus operandi, isn't it, to kind of not patronise, but
he's humouring him, isn't he?
He's humouring him a bit, yeah. But I do think I do genuinely think there's an element to him where he knows how difficult it is at Manchester United. He said that his second place behind Man City was his best achievement in management, and obviously now he's trying to get the winner's medal and the bonus, isn't he, from that, if the charges are brought forward. But so I do think there's a genuine sort of sense from Mourinho on Ten Hag in that aspect. But yeah, I mean, I think Ten Hag has been scrutinised ever since he walked through the door at United. He lost the first 2 games of his tenure, had to change up his tactics, become pragmatic in that way. And so he's adopted this kind of shield against all criticism where he has to be a strong character, because otherwise the players will undermine him and he'll lose that authority. Now, obviously, does it slip into a case of being too straight about your view on football and how you are going to be with the players, and that then causes a little bit of a disconnect with them? I don't know. I think he's tried to soften that a little bit, but at the same time, when you're getting these kind of issues coming up where players are clearly frustrated, he's going to have to manage that very delicately.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about Andre Onana, because he made 2 massive saves to keep it at 1-0 to us. He's found his feet, and actually
he's been excellent this season.
He has. Is he keeping Erik Ten Hag in the job?
Yeah, potentially, because there was that double save at Palace the other week as well. And I mean, last night, you and I were thinking alike, actually, because you compared it to that Schmeichel save against Rapid Vienna, which actually I saw yesterday. I don't know why. It was on television.
The same year as when Fenerbahçe beat United at Old Trafford for the first time in European competition. So it's the same group.
I mean, it was that was a worldly save, and arguably this is even better because it's a double save, and if Fenerbahçe score at that point, it could turn ugly for Manchester United. So I think Onana is one of the few players actually who's coming out this season with any great credit. And I think he cares as well. We're going to hear from him in a bit. We spoke to him in the mix zone. He didn't want to take the plaudits for that save because he said, well, ultimately we've dropped more points. But there are not enough players who care. Martinez had the captain's armband, I'm told, and Laurie will back it up. He's a real big influence in the dressing room, but I'm not sure that he showed that enough on the pitch last night. Garnacho cares. When Anthony was down, injured, when actually he could have just dragged himself off the pitch rather than delaying the play and breaking up United's momentum. He was fuming at that as well as watching Garnacho. He wanted him to get off the pitch as much as I did.
And then he went over to Anthony and said, oh, you're right. I hope you're good.
Let me just mask over this top of the head.
But I want to see more of that from the players, because there's too many players in this team now, and it's become a bit of a, endemic, really. They're just used to not winning matches, and they accept not winning matches.
Yeah.
Manchester United are 21st in Europe's second competition. And you look at the teams they've failed to beat in the last year. I said the dog and duck last night. I was a bit emotional. But I stand by it. This is not a good Fenerbahçe team. The fans want Mourinho sacked.
It's the atmosphere.
United made them look world-class at times. Those first 10 minutes, I thought we were in trouble here.
Yeah, well, as Crookie said, we did catch up with Andre Onana in the mix zone last night, and here's what he had to say.
When we come to such a big platform, we have to win. And I am, and all of us, we are disappointed of the result of today.
Andre, it's more than a year now since Manchester United won a European game. How depressing is that, and how determined are you to put that right as quickly as possible? Because it's become a real Achilles heel.
Well, we try to put it as right as soon as possible, because we came here to win, and we play against us, so we have to recognize a very good opponent, and it will turn. If it was not today, it will be maybe in 2 weeks, but I'm sure it will turn and we'll win games, and everyone's going to be happy.
Also, it's that lack of ability to put together, back-to-back wins. You beat Brentford, everybody thinks is a turning point. Does it feel like 1 step forward, 2 steps back at the moment?
No, I don't look things like this. What I know, when you cannot win, you have to make sure you don't lose. Today, also we have to recognize the quality of the other teams. We are playing Europa League, and it's not easy to play with any opponent in this stage of the competition.
So as you can see, Angelina, look, he does a really good job at saying, listen, it's not me, but he does say he's settled now, etc., etc. And after a really shaky season in his first year, and actually, people were saying he's not single-handedly made us not qualify, but he had a big hand in pretty much every single game in the Champions League run last year, which resulted in us finishing bottom of the group. But what a turnaround from him now.
Yeah, I always had a bit of a soft spot for him when I saw him come in. I was actually quite happy that we'd signed him. I understand that it's been shaky. I understand the criticisms, but I was thinking this last night. When you look at the players that have been signed during this Ten Hag period, is he the best signing at the moment when you look at it? When you think of some of the names? No, not Anthony. Believe it or not Anthony.
We would have said Martinez before, and then he been injured for so long and then struggled to get going.
Yeah, I think somebody like that, it's hard to maybe it's a bit too hard for me to try and compare. But I think that he is, if you had to give maybe your top 3, I think he's definitely in there.
Yeah.
I know that some of the signings we have to see how this season goes, but I think overall when you look at it, he's the standout name for me, and I really like the way that he speaks, his mentality, the way that he comes across. I like the fact that he's quite modest, but he also does seem to care as well, the interviews that he's been giving. So, yeah, I'm really pleased to see him starting to come good, and I hope it continues.
Laurie, I wanted to talk about another Erik Ten Hag signing, Joshua Zirkzee, his first season here. Now, had a hand in the first goal, took that well, and he played, the most simple pass on to Eriksen, but, gets his assist, so he's involved. But after that, struggled, didn't he, in terms of holding the ball up, mobility, releasing the ball to wide positions, whether it's over-hitting passes to Rashford or under-hitting or taking too long to pass the ball to Garnacho, and was taken off fairly early in the second half. What do you make of his performance, and why he's struggling? Is it down to confidence and getting used to Man United, or is it down to Ten Hag's tactics?
It feels like a physicality thing, maybe. I mean, obviously, his last season was in Italy, and the speed of the league there just isn't as quick as the Premier League, and I think that's caught him on his heels a couple of times in Premier League matches, which is odd, because he started well. That was the thing that he did well at Fulham, to get his goal, was arriving in the box at the right time and getting on the end of it. It just feels that he doesn't necessarily have that, that spark, the acceleration in the first instance to get into these positions. It was a lovely ball to Eriksen. I mean, it was the obvious ball. It was but equally it's an assist for him. The Rashford passes were really frustrating. That one in the first half was so badly overhit, and then the one in the second,
easy pass to make,
pass, and then the second nice touch, and then fails to execute what should be again a fairly straightforward pass. And I think that's what made Erik Ten Hag his mind up, because afterwards he referenced that in the press conference, and so. Yeah, I mean, United did look at Benjamin Sesko at the start of the summer, and they couldn't get him, and so they went for Joshua Zirkzee. The release clause, I think, played a part in that. So it's kind of like how much they actually expect him from this guy. He's an alternative to Rasmus Højlund, but at the moment, it doesn't feel like it's going to be it's going to take time, I think, for him to actually really get up to the level that United need.
It looks like more poor recruitment, because I remember speaking to a very senior executive at a Premier League club much lower down the food chain when there was this sort of striker merry-go-round. Dominic Solanke was mentioned, Ivan Toney was mentioned in terms of players who could join elite clubs. And he said to me, Joshua Zirkzee's not really suited for the Premier League. Now, if somebody at a bottom half Premier League club can spot that, why on earth are Manchester United putting their faith in this guy?
Yeah, I mean, for me, he's just looking like he's off the pace. I mean, I remember his first start against Liverpool, which is a tough game to start in, of course, at home. He was almost like saying, I want to play this at my pace, actually. Can we slow this down? And then he's fumbling on the ball, misplacing passes, taking baggy touches.
He looks a bit cumbersome, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I think mobility, like you said, Laurie, is probably not his best forte. It's not his main attribute in terms of hunting and pressing and being agile and changing of direction. He does want to play at a sort of a slower tempo and have runners around him. But I just don't think he fits Man United's style of play right now. It's not what we're trying to do. And we're changing game to game as well.
And the other issue we've got, and you can actually say this about Rasmus Højlund, what United have done in the last couple of seasons is they've overused players before they're ready.
Yeah.
It took a long time for Rasmus Højlund to get up to speed with the Premier League last season, but it's almost desperation that you spend this money on a player and you need instant dividends. Proper clubs don't do it like that, do they?
Yeah, we just put so much pressure onto players when they're not at that level yet. And this is another example of that. I wanted to ask you, Angelina, it wasn't a negative reaction from the travelling Manchester United fans. Would other Premier League sides take a draw away at Fenerbahçe? I mean, we'll get into some stats later on when we see what Ryan has to say. But what I do know off the top of my head is that Fenerbahçe do not lose many games at home. It is a tough place to come to. And like Laurie said earlier on, in isolation, it is a decent point. And the travelling faithful, you don't expect anything less from them, do you?
Yeah, I mean, at full time, they were definitely chanting and everything. But I think you picked up on it, didn't you, that after the players had left the pitch, they were very quiet. I thought it was quite nice. Amrabat went over. He and Ten Hag were having a bit of a chat. I wish I could have heard. I was sorry I couldn't bring you back, mate. I tried my best.
He said that this week, didn't he?
Yeah. You know, the new powers that be wouldn't let me. Sorry, but.
Rightly so, by the way.
Yes, I completely agree. They were right to put their foot down with that one. But yeah, I think overall the fans were, the fans were good. I mean, they're not going to be loud in a place like that. It was so loud from those home fans, and that's what that stadium is known for. So, yeah, one of those. But I just think I agree with what you say that a draw in isolation is good. I think overall, when you look at this Europa League situation, the upcoming fixtures that are at home are against what you would normally class as maybe lesser sides compared to Porto or Fenerbahçe, no disrespect to them. So on paper, you would expect, right, this is the difficult bit.
Yeah.
We've taken draws.
We fought out FC20 at home, didn't we?
Yeah, true.
And if they're away ones, though,
apart from that one, if you look at those two, on paper, those are the tougher opponents.
Yeah.
We haven't actually lost against them.
No.
You've then got these games at home. So when you look at it broadly like that, well, if I'm looking at the Europa League broadly like that, it's not, a panic. It's not a crisis, but it's hard because you then filter in all the other frustrations, and I understand why fans are frustrated. But regarding the Europa League, do I agree when Erik Ten Hag's saying, it's kind of like an aim for the Europa League? We're miles off it, but I think when you look at the way that things have gone so far, we're not in crisis yet.
We can't take it as a given, though, that we're going to put these teams to the sword.
That's true. That is true.
You go back to last season, you lose at Bayern Munich in the Champions League. You think, well, OK, did all right there.
Yeah.
That's the tough fixture out the way. We've got some very winnable home games. We're going to get through this group. And then we didn't.
Bottom.
So...
And that's the problem. On paper, these should be games that Manchester United
just
win.
piles the pressure on.
But we don't know what team's going to show up. We don't know who's going to be injured. We don't know who's going to be in form. We don't know what we're walking into. And this is the problem week in, week out.
It also means he can't really rotate the squad because all these games they've got coming up, they're going to have to win now because they need to finish in the top 8, really. They could do without the extra
You can't have a game where you think, you know what, we're comfortable, maybe play, one or two of the younger players that we saw in the pre-season. Maybe you've not got a game like that anymore with Man United, have you?
Well, listen, it's going to be a long way back to where we need to be. We know that. some games coming up where we're like, on paper, that's winnable. But as we know, football ain't played on paper, and Man United definitely, when we're favourites on paper, it doesn't really mean much. Now listen, Ryan Statman Douglas might not be here on location, but it doesn't stop him from doing his job. We have to hold him accountable. Here's some of the key takeaways he's got from the stats.
Hey guys, it's Ryan Stat Douglas here to break down Fenerbahçe versus Manchester United. Now, we all watched the game. We saw it unravel in front of our eyes, but what do the stats and the facts indicate? Well, I'm going to point you to the first fact here, which is a somber note. Manchester United have only won once in their last 11 major European games. In fact, Man United are now winless in 6, which is the joint longest winless run we've had in Europe. You have to go all the way back to 1980 to 1983 when that's happened again. Jose Mourinho's only lost once in 11 attempts against Manchester United on home soil. So between Fenerbahçe and Mourinho being at home, that was always going to be a difficult game. However, perhaps the most worrying statistic that I read on the back of that Fenerbahçe game, and it probably will be daunting hearing this as well, is that Manchester United have only won once the last 8 times that they've scored first in Europe. So scoring first doesn't necessarily mean a good thing for Man United, which when you look back fondly to the years of Alex Ferguson and seeing out a lead or being able to come back when falling 1-0 down, well, this indicates that there is something wrong with the mentality. In fact, the last 4 times United have scored first, they've gone on to draw in Europe. So that shows a lack of mentality, in my opinion. Now, there's one player that's hit the headlines that perhaps we can all be guilty of not factoring into our thinking when we were thinking about this 24-25 season, and that is Christian Eriksen. He's come into this squad, and it has to be said, he's trying to make this spot his own, and he's doing a very, very good job of it. I mean, we've talked about, we weren't thinking about him. Was Ten Hag factoring Eriksen into his plans when he was planning this new look United in the summer? But what I can tell you is Eriksen has 7 goal involvements in his last 7 games across all competitions. I mean, that's fantastic. 4 goals and 3 assists. Only Alejandro Garnacho, our star boy, has more. So Eriksen has come into this role and he's made it his own. And we have to say, he took that goal absolutely beautifully. That was vintage Eriksen. And we talk about 4 goals and 3 assists. That's as many in his last 35 appearances for Manchester United. So, we've talked about mentality. Are we seeing a mentality monster here? Are we seeing someone who has stepped into this role and has shown everybody, look, I'm still good enough to play at this level and I'm still good enough to play for Manchester United? I want to talk about Bruno Fernandes and what's happened since he stepped out of it. I mean, the question is, do we miss him? And the answer is yes. In fact, it's a massive yes. Manchester United haven't won their last 5 away games when Bruno Fernandes isn't playing. They don't win. That's 2 draws and 3 losses that includes. In fact, in those 5 away games, Manchester United have only scored 2 goals. Now, I know Bruno Fernandes has been a bit of a polarising figure throughout his career. Don't get me wrong, but he's starting to split the fan base a little bit. A few Manchester United fans are calling him out and calling out his consistency. Yes, his goal involvements haven't been where we would expect them to be this season, but that stat indicates that he is a massive influence on this squad. And one of the standout performers was Lisandro Martinez. He had 84 touches, which was more than any Manchester United player. He had 64 passes, which was more than any Manchester United player. In fact, that was a 92.3% pass accuracy for Lisandro Martinez as well. So the question is, does that indicate that Ten Hag's style of wanting ball-playing centre-backs is working? Because Lisandro Martinez was on the ball and he looked like he was the main man. Now, United had to defend for their lives at points during this Fenerbahçe game. And as I say, and as the stats point to, it was always going to be a difficult place to go. So it doesn't surprise me that there was a lot of duels in this game. But who tops the charts for total duels for Manchester United? Well, it's joint actually. Ugarte tops the charts with 13, with only 5 duels won out of those 13, whereas Alejandro Garnacho also had 13 duels, the same amount as Ugarte, but he won more. In fact, he won 7 of them. So we talk about Garnacho being the star boy, being direct, being electric. I love him. You know I'm a massive fan of him, guys. But he does the dirty work as well, and that's fantastic to see. Also, Lisandro Martinez, I pointed him out how he was good being a ball-playing centre-back as well. He also had 12 duels, just 1 less than the other 2, and he won 8 of them. So he really was a pit bull in and amongst it against Fenerbahçe. And finally, let's have a look at the match itself. Well, the match stats, but I have to say there's not much to read into here. When you have a look at these, it does indicate that a draw was probably a fair result between the two sides. You're looking at the XG. Fenerbahçe, they've got 1.15 to Manchester United's 1.21. Yes, we edge it, but there's not much. In terms of shots, Fenerbahçe, they got 10 away. Manchester United had 12 shots. Again, yes, we edged it, but there's not much in it. What I will say about that, though, is it does indicate there's an element and undertone of positivity to Erik Ten Hag's away approach there. So that is a tick for Erik Ten Hag, in my opinion, to get more shots away than the home side. And of course, shots on target, 5 each. Again, not much to tear between them. So in summary, what I will say is, in isolation, this fixture, that game, a point is a good result. I really do think that a point, with all things considered, Mourinho's home record against United, combined with Fenerbahçe's home record in the Europa League, that was always going to be a tough game to go to. And 1 point isn't too bad. Yes, we'd have liked to win, but it's not too bad. It's when you scroll out and look at the broader picture of Manchester United's in the league table in the Europa League, only 3 points. I think the first game and the second game have made a rod for Manchester United's back. So I'd be more inclined to blame those two games than I would this result against Fenerbahçe. But I'll let you guys be the judge.
So, Laurie, 1 win in the last 8 in Europe for Man United.
Yeah, I mean, it's also the fact that they keep scoring first but not holding on to the lead. I think that's the crucial element, because if you actually go to 20, Porto, Fenerbahçe, they could have won all 3 games had they had a more resolute defence. So, I don't know, tighten up and it might be okay.
It's one of them, it's a constant thing, isn't it? We can't hold on to leads. And when you see that sort of stat, what Ryan just said there, it's no surprise, is it?
No, and it's frustrating, and I think this is the whole thing where you have to look at, you know, the players' mentality, that you're leading games and then you're not holding on to those leads. It's so frustrating. You pair that with the fact that we have got a goal scoring issue as well. So you're managing to score a goal, that's great. You can't hold on to it. And then you've got no guarantees that you're going to be able to claw back another goal or two, because we've got this problem when it comes to finding the back of the net.
Crookie, Christian Eriksen, he's had a hand in 7 goals in his last 7 starts, 4 goals, 3 assists. Something on the positive side. This is a player that we probably thought was surplus to requirements, especially in this summer. You know, maybe get a few million quid for him after getting him on a free. But actually, mate, he's been our most potent attacker apart from Garnacho.
Yeah, he has. I think they'd probably let him go in the summer if anybody was willing to take his wages off the payroll. But he's making quite the case, isn't he, for getting his contract extended. I probably still feel like that wouldn't be the right thing to do at his age. I kind of feel like United need to move on and get a younger feel to the squad. But he is someone who does lead by example. He is a leader, not necessarily in the most vocal fashion, but I think he sets high standards. And obviously he is... You mentioned Onana. I think Eriksen's doing as much to keep Ten Hag in a job as anybody as well, and he's almost undroppable, isn't he, in that midfield, which has been a real problem area this season, him apart.
Big surprise for you, Laurie, because it was someone that, you know, people saying legs not quite there anymore, he's not combative, we have to move on from him. And in his first season with Casemiro and Bruno, he was part of the main 3 who played almost every game in that decent season for Erik Ten Hag. We showed last year that the plan was to move away from him. Ugarte comes in this year, big money signing. Mason Mount still waiting for him to not be injured, but you know, a really good turnaround for Christian Eriksen.
Yeah, I thought he would be going in the summer, to be honest. I mean, I know Ajax think were interested in him, but the wages were a big factor for them. They just couldn't do it. And credit to him for the fact that he's actually come back and he's looking good, but he's playing full matches. You know, he's playing for Denmark, he's playing for Man United, he's making those contributions. He was the perfect player for that ball to fall to last night. You know, lovely finish where he's sort of guided it into the corner. Yes, I mean, when he signed as well for United, obviously on a free transfer, 3-year contract, you're sort of thinking that's a lot for this kind of player, and he only got that, I think, because it was a free transfer. Now they're thankful for it, right? Because actually he's contributing in this 3rd season.
Yeah, knowing us, probably give him an extension, probably be on Johnny Evans' vibe, just you know, rolling.
It's one of those, though. You think about it. You know, we were talking about the Scott McTominay situation and United doing good business. You know, if Eriksen continues like this, you know, regarding if there are going to be more takers for him, so surely this is a positive thing. Whether they keep hold of him or we do sell him, it puts United in a better position.
Angelina, Bruno, now he's come under big criticism this year for not being anywhere near his normal level of performance, especially after signing that massive contract. But the stats say when he doesn't play, we don't create him, we're not good.
That's not a Bruno stat, is it?
Yeah, that's
we don't win away from home if he's in the team or
I
not.
don't think that is solely dependent on Bruno. Yeah, I don't think that's solely dependent on Bruno Fernandes. He has been, because we're poor with or without him. He's been very frustrating. I do have empathy for the situation. It can't be an easy position to be in as the captain and to not be performing. I know that he comes under a lot of scrutiny. People don't like his, people call it petulance and different things. And I can see both sides of it, but the bottom line is he is not performing, and when he got sent off and then that red card got rescinded, I was kind of disappointed because I wanted to see what we were going to do without him, and that's why I was maybe looking forward to last night to seeing who would be playing more in that position, and then we got Mazraoui.
Yeah.
No, I was not. But again, it's frustrating because if Mason Mount was fit,
that's the real frustration, isn't it?
Yeah, because you think, Bruno Fernandes and Mason Mount, can they really play together in the same 11? I don't think so. So it's really annoying that Mount isn't ready, because that game last night could have been a good opportunity. I'm not saying that we should, cast Bruno Fernandes to the side, but if it's not working, captain or not, if something's not working, you need to have other options. This is a very long season as well. You do need to have rotation. Bruno Fernandes barely is injured, but the way the injuries are going, he'll probably get injured as well. So you've got to have that variety. But yeah, it's been frustrating from Bruno,
to say the least. Laurie, one for you, because you did sort of talk about a little bit of context in terms of in isolation. In isolation, we can look at this. Ryan said there, Fenerbahçe have lost just one of their last 21 home games in the Europa League, winning 13 and drawing 7. So from a player's point of view, and we're not trying to just be toxic positivity here, this is just a fact. From the player's point of view and Eric's point of view, they will look at it and go, like what Angelina was saying as well, on paper, these are the difficult ones. Teams don't normally come here and win.
Yeah, and I certainly remember,
especially a poor Man United side.
So Alex Ferguson, he brought United team, lost here. They've lost more recently than that as well. It's Fenerbahçe. So, yeah, I totally accept that in a normal circumstance, that is a point away in Turkey. Great, bit of an experienced people. It's just that it feels like, treading water. I've sort of wrote on my piece today that if that's what it feels like, it's this kind of state of limbo almost, where you can't say, okay, it's definitely not working, it's we need to rip it up totally, and you can't get behind it and think it's a success and okay, I can see the progress here. It feels like there's different aspects to each match that you're picking out and going, okay, does that work for the next game? I don't know. Martinez is a left back, or Mazraoui is a number 10 now. I know these are kind of stopgap solutions because of the injuries and the suspensions, but there doesn't feel at the moment like there's a clear path of progress. Maybe in isolation in certain cases, Garnacho was again sort of showing that real fight and determination to his game. Højlund, I think, again when he came on, that physicality up front, that hold-up play that he showed against Brentford was encouraging. But as a collective, there isn't that thing to get excited about at the moment.
Laurie's sort of basically alluding there, Crookie, to stagnation, essentially. That there's no clear upwards trajectory, but we're not. It's not like the crisis when you lose. No. It's very mundane, stagnation at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, he steadied the ship, I guess you could say, with the draw at Villa, coming from behind to beat Brentford and then picking up a point here. But if they lose to West Ham, I think it will be in full-on crisis mode again. There was one positive for me last night, and that was Manuel Ugarte. I thought for the first hour of that game, he was really good.
Yeah. Is that what he's going to be about? Sort of getting his foot in. I mean, he wins the ball off Fred. Getting stuck in. He's a high volume fouler.
It was a nice pass to Zirkzee, to be fair, as well.
And a nice pass. Yeah,
and he
exactly.
did a nice sliding tackle as well when Fenerbahçe were through.
Amazing. That was a certain goal as well. So there are some positives. If Crookie can see some positives.
I was going to say, I'm surprised you've even got one positive. You were nearly in tears last night.
I hope he's going to be as positive about this bit now, because we do need to move on to West Ham. Listen, Crookie, and you guys, and you lot watching at home, West Ham are not in a good moment. No. They've moved on from David Moyes, and it's not working well. I think it's fair to say that. Yes, they thrashed Ipswich, but you saw what happened to them in their last game. Absolutely destroyed defensively, getting picked apart, destroyed at home against Chelsea as well. And some of the defending that they've been displaying has been absolutely awful. Having said that, Man United now come to town. We don't travel well there. I mean, I remember being at the stadium last year at London Stadium. The West Ham fans were booing their team off at half-time because it was so mundane. They come out in the second half. I think Paquetá with a little dinked ball over to Jarrod Bowen. Really easy goal, and then Kobbie Mainoo gives the ball away for the second. So we don't travel well there. What are you expecting to see on Sunday?
Well, it's been a long-term problem when it comes to Upton Park. You know, you go back to the last day of the 95 season, and that tells you all you need to know.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous fixture, this, because on the face of it, I think it's a great time to play West Ham. I'm told the players are not particularly buying into what Lopetegui wants to do. Fulkrug obviously is still injured, and Lopetegui's picking Antonio, even though he doesn't really fancy him as a player. So this is an opportunity for United to take advantage of that defensive mishaps, those defensive mishaps that West Ham have showed, as you mentioned, against Chelsea and against Tottenham. But we know that United are not a team who score a lot of goals, so I don't see them going there and comfortably winning. And I could easily see West Ham turning up and putting in a performance, because they do have individual quality. I think, no, Kudus is a big bonus for United, but they've still got Paquetá and Bowen, who could ask questions of our defence. So can we say with any great certainty that United will win this game? I don't think we can. I think what I can say definitively, it's going to be another difficult watch.
Yeah, and West Ham have won their last 2 Premier League home games without conceding as well.
Yeah, I agree with Crookie. It's an interesting
Against
one.
Man United, that is.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because on one hand it seems like Ten Hag manages to pull a rabbit out of a hat, but I think it is going to be a really frustrating game. I think obviously you've got all these injuries as well. Is it like 10 injuries now? Anthony left on crutches. I mean, to be honest, I'm not really counting him anyway. But but you you've got to be brutal, Crookie. Got to be
Very brutal. We wish him a speedy recovery as well, by the way.
Oh yeah, of course. Like, I don't want him to be like in pain or injured. I'm just not bothered about him playing. That's all.
Yeah.
You've got all these injuries. You don't even know how he's going to line up. Like, if I had to name a starting 11 now, I don't even know what's going to happen. The only thing that I can hope is, like Rookie said, it's a good time to play West Ham. I do want to see Rasmus Højlund starting. I think that we need to start building a bit of momentum with him. Zirkzee, to me, looks like he's got absolutely no confidence whatsoever. So if I see him starting, I understand maybe if a player's lacking in confidence, you might play them to try and help. But I think United need goals. United need to have a good game, and I think Rasmus Højlund has got to start.
Laurie, are we at the point now where a big defeat in the Premier League could be Erik's last game, or are we at the point where Ineos, they decided not to make a change in the last international break, so there's not going to be any hasty decisions regardless of the results in the immediate in this batch of fixtures before the next international break in November?
I suppose it depends on performance and the kind of mood. I'd be very surprised. I don't think we're at that stage now. I think there was obviously that feeling that maybe that was going to be on the table, but I think all along they've not wanted to sack Erik Ten Hag because they gave him an extension, or they triggered the extension at the end of the season for whatever reason, in terms of when they were looking around the management. We can get into the details of that perhaps another time, but ultimately they backed him, and then also the signings and the coaches, they were all his decisions, his influence on them. So for them to change it now would upset the process that they want to try and subscribe to. That being said, results will dictate. So we'll see what comes at West Ham, but I don't think we're at a stage now where one defeat and that's Erik gone at all. I think there's. And certainly he would, push back at that. Obviously, he's pushed back hard, hasn't he? Suggesting fairy tales were written about that whole situation. So I think he feels comfortable in his relationship with the Ineos executive and feels like he's got their backing.
Okay, let's lock it in then before we wrap up. Predictions. We'll start with you, Laurie, actually. Manchester United going to the London Stadium. Give us a prediction.
I think United will win this one, just as what Crookie was touching on there. I don't think it's a total happy camp at West Ham, and I feel like United have got enough in them for a kind of wild, chaotic, some kind of victory.
So you're not going with a scoreline, but just United will win?
2-1, let's say.
2-1. I think there's going to be a lot of 2-1s. Go on.
You know what? I'm going to back my man, Andre Onana. I'm backing him.
Yeah.
Getting a clean sheet.
Okay, so what, 0-0 draw?
I'm speaking it into existence. I'm going to go 1-0 to Man United.
Yeah, okay, tight. Crookie?
I was going to say 2-1, but actually I think that the lack of a number 9, Antonio's going to come and bite me now, isn't he? I'll go 2-0 United.
The 2-1 looks likely to me. I just think they've still got a bit with Bowen on the break. Somerville probably coming on the left-hand side. They might mix things up a little bit. Paquetá and Supply. I could just feel us conceding, but I think we're going to get 2. So I think we're going to go 2-1. Guys, thank you for joining us on Inside Devils. It's been an absolute pleasure. Big up to Alex Crook, Angelina Kelly, and of course Laurie Whitwell for joining us. Get your views and comments in the boxes below and let us know what your prediction is as we head to West Ham to try and get back-to-back wins in the Premier League for the first time in. I need Ryan to tell us how long in. Latest. We're out of here. Take care. Peace.